All right, YouTube, today's the day we get this 55 Chevy Truck cab back on the frame permanently. What's up, guys, and welcome back to In the Shop TV. On the last episode, we got that master and booster installed, relocated onto the firewall, looking great. I think the cab is finally ready to get on this frame, and man, am I looking forward to it, because I am sick of doing body and paint on this cab. You know, just regular chores, like my kids' cars need some work and some oil changes, and I can't get anything on the lift because I've got this thing sitting there. Once I get this cab on, we can start hooking up the brake lines, we can hook up steering, and I think once we get those two things done, and a gas pedal and a drive shaft, then we can start moving this thing in and out of the shop so that I can get other cars on the lift if I need to change oil or just do something or just general maintenance. Plus, there's just something about having the cab on that makes it kind of like an actual vehicle. We can start it and hear the thing run and sit in it. I don't know, I'm kind of excited about it. So let's get going. So I've lowered the frame down. It's been up in the air for probably a month or two. Peeling the plastic back, making sure everything looks good. And I'm starting to disconnect the harness from my little temporary control box that I had. I'm gonna get this bench seat off of there in a second. Got the cab lined up. I think it's lined up where it needs to be. And we're gonna use our engine hoist and a boom arm that I made a while back underneath the roof to lift it. We'll kind of wheel it on over and set it down. Things I'm nervous about is that fuel line right there, because the firewall does come down on an angle, but mathematically I think it's gonna clear, but it's gonna be really close, especially with that cab kind of dangling in the air. Really don't want to hit the fuel line. The other thing I'm concerned about is the harness that I have. Our O2 harness there, we have our actual transmission harness, and then I have some LED lights, a little harness that I made. And then of course the engine and intake itself, I just don't want the firewall hitting it, and I also don't want to damage the firewall since that's new. So I think what I want to do is I've got this harness all coiled up. I'm going to kind of set it on top of the transmission as neatly as I can because our transmission cover is off in the cab. I think I'm going to get my son in here, and I called a friend over just because doing this by myself, I've done it twice, but now there's lots of stuff hooked up to it and I just don't want to ruin anything. So just having two other people here that can just kind of hold it and prevent it from banging into anything or crashing would be a tremendous help. Can you walk around and grab the blanket that's over there on the other side of the roof? All right, so I figured I would just set you guys up on a tripod and let you see that whole process kind of sped up. Kind of self-explanatory. Don't feel like I needed to narrate the whole thing and bore you guys. Got the gist of it. It's just with the now more finished state of everything, I needed a couple extra hands in here just to hold that cab, brace it, and make sure it doesn't bump into anything or scratch stuff or hit the engine or the brake boost or any of that other good stuff. Next step is pretty important though. I want to get all the bolts and hardware and mount this cab and square it up. It's really important that the cab is square, because if you're off by just 1/8 of an inch on one side, that translates to being no fender gap on the other side or something like that. So it's really important that you get all 4 bolts squared up true so that all your panels line up correctly when you go to assemble the truck. All right, so here at the back of the cab, I had to do a little bit of shimmying. Basically this crease right here in the body mount, or the cab mount rather, I like to line up with the wall of the cab. Same thing on the other side, and then from the frame bracket to the cab mount, I got exactly 2.5 inches. And on this side, 2.5 inches exactly as well. So before we get that cab corner mounted up, I broke something, but this time it was intentional. These old capture nuts that come in here, they're really rusty and cruddy, and they kind of have a tendency to break free, so I just helped it along and broke it free. I'll go ahead and put some rust converter on there just to lock up that rust, and we'll put a little top coat on it. We'll get separate hardware to lock that bolt down. Not the biggest brush in the world, but it'll do for a quick little dab. All right, so I picked up some new hardware. I'm gonna make my own little cab mounting kit right here. These are a little bit longer bolts. We've got washers and we've got some nylon lock nuts. We're I can, I like to use a little bit of a longer bolt because now I have extra thread. If I ever need to put cable clamps or put route wires back here or something, it's just good to have some extra thread without having to drill holes in the cab. I did the last one off camera, but when you square the front up, I just wanted to show you it's kind of the same deal. I lined up the surface of the cab with the surface of this frame bracket so that they're both flush here. Then I measured the distance from the end of the frame bracket to the end of the step box, and I got the same thing on both sides. So now our cab should be nice and square. All right, so now that the cab is all permanently mounted to the frame and square, I want to go through and start hooking up some really important fundamental stuff. We got to do our hard brake lines that go from our master cylinder down to our frame where we have hard brake tubing ready to go. We got to ground the cab, very important that we do that. Then I want to hook up manifold vacuum from the back of our intake manifold to the booster that we just installed. All right, so I'm just connecting the vacuum line to the booster we just installed off the back of the intake. So I rehooked up my little temporary control panel over here, and I'm going to start it up now and press this brake pedal, just make sure that booster that we just put on is working properly. So one really important step in this is we have to get a grounding strap and secure it from a really good solid ground under the vehicle to the cab itself, or from the engine block to the cab itself. So I'm gonna get this thing up in the air and see what we can do. There we go. So kind of tough to see, but right there, that hole in the cab is the factory grounding location. And if we zoom out, right on the other side of these bolts right here is our positive terminal block from the battery and our ground terminal block. So I think the shortest action is to be coming right from that terminal block to that ground location. And that'll ensure really solid ground directly to the battery, to the cab. The other option is, you can still see it again right there, is to go right to the cylinder head, which is fine. I think that's how it was done actually. But it just doesn't make sense if I have a known 100% ground right to the battery right here, and there's our spot on the cab, why not take it? I just made up a ground cable real quick. I like to, actually make these and use a jacketed cable rather than those braided style flat ones that you see. They get kind of gross and dirty. All right, so for fitment reasons, I doubled up on this one terminal, and that's going straight to the battery. And this is our cab ground. So no one's gonna say we do not have a well-grounded cab, that's for sure. And our cab is now properly grounded. All right, so most importantly, I just made up this double brake line here. This is gonna go from our master, or actually from our proportioning valve, down to the frame right here where we have two AN fittings next to our fuel line. So I put that little piece of wire loom right here just to kind of protect it in case. I'm going to strap it up with a rubber and stainless steel clamp to the firewall itself, but just to keep it in case it does hit the firewall, which I don't think it's going to, but a little bit of cushion so it doesn't, we don't have impact against the firewall. Now, the last time I made a video using these type of brake lines, I got some comments that where people were freaking out and said, you can't use copper brake lines. I'm not using copper. These are copper coated steel, or I use NiCop, which is a blend of nickel and copper. Both totally safe to use, both totally rigid and durable, perfect for brake lines and easy to work with. I wouldn't use like those refrigerator copper lines, you know, for your ice maker, but I know they look just like that. So, you know, if you probably didn't know, just in case you didn't know, I'm not using freezer ice maker lines for my brakes. All right, so the cab's mounted up, we're squared, engine's running, booster's working, cab's grounded, brakes are plumbed, got done what I wanted to get done, we're in pretty good shape. Next video, we're doing a huge tool giveaway, so you don't want to miss that one. I think I'm going to cut this one off here, guys. If you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you as a regular subscriber. And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you in the shop.